Three, two, one. Welcome to the David Dog Trainer Podcast, episode 116. Today we're being joined by Dylan of Chinook Canine. I think that's the proper pronunciation, but we'll find out. Let's get him. Let's go. What's that? Oh, yeah, I gotta get that one. Doo-doo.
Hello. There we go.
Yes.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Oh, hang on. Let's get the
Awesome.
video situated.
I can't see anybody, but
Yeah.
oh, there you are.
Here we go. All right.
How's it going, guys?
It's
Good.
going. We can't see you either.
Oh, you can't see me? Okay, just a sec. Is there something I got to do to fix that?
Generally, you just got to hit the start video in the bottom left of the screen.
Recording in
Start
progress.
video. Yeah, I see it. I see it.
Yeah.
Okay, allow access
there
to
we
camera.
go.
There we go.
Now,
Hey.
Can you see me now?
we could
Sure
see
can.
you.
Awesome. Yeah, I just got a new phone, so I'm still adjusting the settings there. So,
Are you doing this?
how are you
on
guys
your
doing
phone?
this morning?
Oh, we're great. We're doing not too shabby.
Good.
Glad we finally got you
Good.
on. I like all the swag you got all dished out there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always kind of swagged up in that regards. We got a lot of like merchandise and stuff we like to wear, and the logo's pretty catchy, so people notice it pretty quickly.
Yeah, the giant canine. I used to be so fucking bad about wearing any sort of like company merch. I don't know why. Like
Yeah.
ever since like when I started my first company, I remember we'd have gear, and my business partner at the time would get so pissed at me. He's like, "You never wear the Heights canine stuff. You never wear the Heights canine stuff." And I was
Yep.
just like, I'm just so I just feel like I'm so particular about like the clothes I wear and stuff. So it's like,
Yeah, yeah.
like I need something that
Yeah,
like
you-
really feels good to have on, you know, regardless
Yep,
of how
yep.
cool the logo is. So I feel like that is the one thing I did like with the new company when we started getting merch printed is I was like, I'm only printing this shit on stuff that I actually want to wear. And I still hardly ever fucking wear it.
Yeah, exactly. Good quality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you get your staff to wear the merchandise too, or
Yeah.
Is
So we do require that they have at least
Yeah.
one piece of Miracle Canine clothing on at all times. That can
Smart.
be as simple as we got like beanie hats that just have the little tiny dog logo on it, and it's like you could just wear that. I don't give a fuck, but it's got to be something like that. But we also provide most of it for them, so we don't like make them. We have an employee
Of
that
course,
used to
yeah.
work for like a big box chain. And she said that they used to require that they purchased all of the merchandise and they had to wear all of it, which I thought was the craziest shit ever.
yeah, that's definitely strange. But yeah, before I guess we get too into it, definitely good to be on the show finally. I know we kind of have talked back and forth about it for a while now, so
Yeah.
glad we kind of worked out a date and stuff. And I've been a fan of the podcast for a long time, so it's absolutely awesome to be on the show.
Hell yeah,
That's
dude.
I think I've been following you since like your first couple episodes, honestly.
Really? Hell yeah. That's
Let's
awesome,
go.
dude. Yeah.
Definitely.
I think we really connected like when was it you that like John Trains Dogs was like all over your fucking page also or something?
Yeah.
Oh,
We
God.
had that mutual enemy kind of thing, so we connected through that, I think. But yeah,
Hell
I
yeah,
was
dude.
dealing with the wrath of John Trains Dogs as well for a little while. So
That's so funny. He wound up being the only person in the history of any like page I've ever had that I blocked. Like it just hit a point where I was like, I just gotta block this dude, and then I blocked him.
yeah,
And it's funny because like my personal page, like I don't think he knows about it or anything like that. So once in
Yeah.
a blue moon, I'll like go on his page and just see what he's up to, and it seems like it's all the same.
absolutely
antics.
nothing.
So yeah. Hell yeah,
Yeah,
dude. Well,
he's-
why don't you go ahead and just kind of introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are, what you do, all that.
Yeah, so my name's Dylan, and I'm the owner and head trainer at Chinook Canine. So Chinook Canine's the business that I started probably, I think 4 years ago now. It's been since I started the business. We do board and trains and private training, primarily dealing with reactive, aggressive dogs, and just general behavior modification is kind of our specialty. But we do all sorts of other things like obedience training and puppy training, of course. I run the business entirely out of my house, which is a little bit unique for people that run, a business like mine. So we do have a pretty good volume of dogs and a good volume of clients, as well as several staff members. And I run the business from my home, and I've always done that. So that's kind of the gist of it for me. We're located in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. If you're familiar with where that is, that's where we're located. So it's a relatively large city. And yeah, so I'm just up here doing my dog training thing. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I guess I didn't realize you were in Canada until like maybe 45 minutes ago when I was like scrolling through your page and stuff like that a little
Oh,
bit.
wow.
And I saw Alberta and I was
Yeah.
like, oh damn, he's up in Canada. I don't know why that didn't click, obviously. So the first question that popped in my head when I heard that, and actually this is a dumb question because I have a bunch of colleagues and stuff that are
Yeah.
in Canada, but aren't there some sort of bans on training tools in Canada? Or is there
We
not?
don't currently have any bans where I am at. I don't know if maybe there are certain provinces that do have
Gotcha.
bans on tools. I know that certain cities implement rules like that as well, but I'm not sure how strict they are with it. Luckily, where I am at, we don't have anything like that, and I'm sure we won't for a
Yeah.
long time. But yeah, there's definitely some very like more left leaning parts of the country that may certainly incorporate those bans.
Yeah.
I know Toronto. I think it had to have been like 7 years ago or so now. Attempted to ban prong collars, but I think that was overturned. I believe. I think that actually the IACP or something had a hand in getting that overturned.
Yeah.
But currently, we don't have any tool bans. Again, though, the way things are going with our country and yours as well, most likely, it's it may come very soon.
Yeah.
It very
Yeah,
well may.
I feel like recently, like in the last like month or so, we had maybe a YouTube comment or something like that from somebody that was saying they were from Canada and saying something was
Yeah.
banned somewhere. But at that time I was like, oh, Canada probably has a legislation against it. But then I was like, wait a minute, I got like 6 colleagues up in Canada that I talk to semi-regularly that
Yeah.
have never said anything
Just
about
give
that
me-
before.
I'm just going to disconnect the Wi-Fi here so I can go into
Sure.
cellular because I'm cutting out a little bit.
No, you're
Give me
good.
1 sec. Perfect. But yeah, I don't think we have any tool bans as far as my knowledge goes, but we do have breed bans. So there is like pit bull bans and stuff across the country. Certain
Mhm.
provinces do ban bully breeds and stuff like that. So we have a lot of breed specific legislation.
Yep.
Countrywide, I don't know if you guys have any of that in America anywhere, but
Yeah. It's
yeah, that's kind of a bit of an issue that we deal with.
it's very city by city for us. So it's like really on
Yeah,
a minor
yeah.
scale, obviously. And there are some cities that are extremely strict
Yeah.
about it, others that aren't. But it's nothing
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
nationwide. And honestly, as it sounds like it is a little bit up in your case, because we talked to somebody else from Canada just a couple episodes ago. And she was saying that, but she was saying there still are like a decent amount of like bully breeds that just kind of register as whatever, something else,
Yeah, that's kind of the way I think they get around it. But I think Ontario, that's the province I should say that I know has strict breed specific legislation. They've been in the news for like literally like shipping dogs out of the province once they find out that they have
Oh, wow.
a bully, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So
Do you,
they're pretty strict on that kind of thing.
do you know anything about the history of like when that started getting really intense in Canada? Like why they are so strict about it over there?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. I don't know if there was a specific case or situation that led to it. I'm honestly not sure. I'm not really up on that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. The breed specific ban thing, obviously, we know as trainers is like so interesting because, like, obviously the intentions are there of like trying to like reduce bites and dog attacks and like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But like, it's obviously we don't see any sort of. I mean, like you get your golden doodles and your freaking retrievers and stuff like that that come in that have all the same issues. But would you say that there are any sort of like things that you see less of or more of or anything like that in that whole kind of conversation of like banning dogs like pit bulls or some of the stronger bully breeds or anything like that?
Yeah. Oh, it's a tough one. Hey, that's like
Yeah.
a hot topic. It's
Yeah.
in my personal standpoint, I don't think just anybody should go out and own a pit bull.
Sure.
And it's definitely one of those things where people do breed them and raise them for some of the wrong reasons a lot of the times.
Yeah.
But just even beyond that, they're just regardless, even if you get a really well bred one, they're powerful dogs. They're dangerous dogs even, right?
Sure.
And so that's something that needs to definitely be considered with that. There are a lot of very nice pit bulls. There's a lot of nice bully breeds and stuff like that. So it's, can I say that they should have a ban on them? That's very difficult, but
Yeah.
I think sorts of legislation could be in place, like, making sure that the dogs are coming from reputable breeders and stuff, right? But that goes into the whole wider topic of, in general, just spaying and neutering dogs that aren't going to be bred or shouldn't be bred.
Yeah.
So, I don't, I don't know. It's a tough one. Hey, I don't agree with bans in general,
Sure.
period,
Yeah,
right? Like I'm not really on board with that. But yeah, it would certainly be nice if there was some way to kind of control who was getting these dogs and stuff,
yeah,
where they were getting the dogs from.
yeah,
But that's the case with any dog, Rottweilers, Cane Corsos, all of them. That's kind of the case, right?
yeah,
Malinois even, right?
yeah.
So
We've
it's it's a hot topic.
Yeah, we've never dug super deep into that conversation. I think we touched on it 2 times before that I could remember. One time was after the incident we had here in Tennessee recently, which I'm sure like every dog trainer on the face of the planet saw, where the 2 kids got killed, the mom got seriously injured. And then the other time, I think was maybe shortly after that when we had American Standard on and we briefly talked about the conversation of pit bulls specifically being like power breeds, we've referred to them as, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's such a dicey conversation because so many people are so like shy to talk about it and talk about the instincts and stuff that they're bred for, and the fact that like I know here, right, the culture around owning pit bulls also is so interesting. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, because they're like the rescue breed of choice. They're the number one breed that you see in shelters and stuff like that. So there's already this emotional, like, heartfelt connection to like saving these babies that need help. And then just, God, man, pity moms out of any dog mom are like some of the worst possible owners you could see sometimes. So it's so tough of like how much of it is just like a breed problem versus just a mentality around the breed problem that's just enhancing on these traits that frankly many other breeds have in the first place. You know what I mean? So it's definitely a tough conversation for sure.
Yeah, we actually had an incident. I want to say it must have been just in the fall, maybe the summer of last year. It was probably only a neighborhood or 2 away from me actually where this happened. An old lady was out cleaning up and gardening in her back alley area, and apparently 3 pit bulls broke through the fence and totally mauled her, killed her in the back alley. And I think it was like an 80-year-old woman or something like that. And that was on the news and stuff like that. It wasn't quite as a big of a story as that Tennessee incident, but that was a big story here where that happened. And again, it goes into the who owns them and what they're actually raising and breeding them for. And they're a dog that a lot of people, like you said, people have that mentality when they get. I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people that get them for having a tough dog that's gonna be aggressive, right? Unfortunately, but you were saying, like you said, with like pit bull fur moms and stuff. It's like that's where it's like I don't agree with legislation because some of those clients can be really difficult, but some of those clients are some of the best ever, and like they really love their dogs and they have really great dogs. They just might misunderstand them or not be even aware. And once they become aware and do the right things, they end up with great dogs. They become great handlers.
Yeah.
But again, it's like not without that training, not without that guidance, Otherwise, like I said, they can be difficult and dangerous. So like I would hate to, say to those people like you just shouldn't own this dog because some of them can clearly, adjust and work through that stuff. But a lot of people can't, and a lot of people don't want to. A lot of people aren't trying to fix those dogs,
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things that I see that gets them into trouble is the freaking like chase and grab instinct they have. I feel like is really where a lot of the issue arises, because like so many of them are actually, I don't want to say very social, but they socialize fine with other dogs, right? Like generally speaking, if you have them in a one-on-one play group and stuff like that, they love to play and run and tumble around and all that kind of stuff. And under 99% of circumstances, it's fine. But those same dogs that are extremely friendly and playful with other dogs, in the right circumstances of just like being behind some sort of barrier and just being let loose, it's just... They just go into this frantic state of like not even trying to like freaking kill anything, but like just they have to like get to that thing with all of its intensity and just grab it with all of its might, And I think that's that's the challenging part about it is they could be so misleading to people from the standpoint of they'll socialize them a couple times, they'll see them be very friendly and stuff, and then they'll just think that they're fine, right? And then they run into a situation like that where their front door is left unlocked or they get out of a gate or something like that, and then they go barreling down the street and they just attack or maul another fucking dog because of that instinct that's just drilled into them,
Yeah, I don't know. It's it's tough because people don't understand the breed, and so like it's like anybody that owns a bully breed should understand the history of them. They should know what a game bred dog is. They should know what that breed was bred for and is used for.
Yep.
And even today is still used for, right? Like these are fighting dogs. These are dogs that are bred to go chase and kill large animals, right?
Yeah.
And they're meant to take a beating while doing it too, right? And so that's really at the end of the day what they are. Obviously, we know that myth of them being nanny dogs is just an ill-conceived myth. I don't know where that came from, but sure. There's a Facebook page I enjoy following. It's called, I think it's called Dogs of Grit is what the Facebook page is called.
Okay.
And it's there's some stuff in there that's like not ideal, right? Like there's definitely a lot of people that probably fight dogs and stuff within this Facebook group. But there's also a lot of people that breed pit bulls for wild game killing and stuff like that, chasing and catching wild game and boars and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And those dogs are just the most powerful, amazing dogs. Like watching them really work and stuff and do their thing is just, it's insane. But you can see where that comes from when you watch, the pit bull get let loose to go chase down the boar and kill it. You can see why when they break through that back gate, they go and kill the nearest toddler or dog that they find, right?
Yeah.
That's why, right? Because that's what they were bred to do. That's what their instincts tell them to do. So that predatory drift, and that's usually what kind of I think instigates that is that whatever it is becomes prey to them. That's a switch that can't really be shut off until they've completed their job, right?
Yeah.
Like you can watch them when they're mauling these animals, when they're being used for what they were bred to do, when they're killing, like I said, a boar or something, and the boar is kicking them, thrashing at them. The other dogs are, barreling over top of them and stuff, and they're not letting go. They're not quitting that mission till that thing stops moving.
Yeah.
And that's their one goal, right? To get it to stop moving. And once it stops moving, it's you can see it like, you just take your pet pit bull and take a squeaker and watch it dissect it until it stops squeaking. It's the same thing, right? So it's fun. It's awesome. I love that about the breed, but unless you're aware of that,
yes,
then you should probably own one, right?
The mindfulness of it is so important because we could equate that to like any other breed. Like if we talk about, Malinois, right? Like you get a Malinois that you want to be a strong, resilient dog that is not going to back down in the face of adversity, right? And it's like, it's the same trait, right? It's a slightly different, but it's a similar trait and a similar state of mind that is so sought after. But that's where we get into that conversation of, I talked about it when we talked about it in that one podcast episode. It isn't a breed thing. It's not like we're out here shitting on pit bulls, right? Or anything like that. It's simply a fact that they've got to be categorized more in that power breed family of something that takes a more skilled owner to truly keep safe and sound because they understand those traits,
Yeah, and I think that's like when you're talking about breed specific legislation. If we're talking about banning breeds, I'm not on board with banning pit bulls, but if we're going to ban anything, let's we should not ban anything, but make sure that there's very, significant rules over who can own all of those power breeds, not just pit bulls, Cane Corsos, Rottweilers, Malinois, German Shepherds, pit bulls. No, just random people should not be owning these dogs. Like, the average person should not be owning these dogs. They shouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
Does that mean that we should not be breeding them or, whatever? No, I don't necessarily think that's the case, or should we ban ownership? No, I don't think so. But man, at the same time, it's like our job would definitely be a lot easier if we just had doodles and Goldens and retrievers and labs to work with.
It'd
be nice.
I think a happy medium really would be also just like, forget the banning and stuff. Like, just like require some degree of education, you have to get some sort of like, hey, like I understand the traits, right? Like I understand how to keep this dog safe. I understand what I need to do from a training standpoint. Because again, a large chunk of our clientele is pit bulls that wind up being amazing dogs for their owners once they understand them and they get proper training on them, So that would be such a simple solution for this instead of just like straight out just being like they just can't be here, right? We can't have them in this country or in this province or anything like that.
Yeah, and I think
that comes down to the breeders.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just going to say it. It's especially here in the States. It's like I think the big conception of pit bulls, like you said, are these like, oh, they're so sweet and they're these beautiful like nesting dogs or whatever, and and people get like they have that personification of that breed, you know, of these pit bulls, and it's like you were saying, maybe there's a better like light on these pit bulls or what they really are, or like educating people like, hey, this is what they were actually bred to do. You know, at the end of the day, they're not these like nice, you know, the more docile kind of breed that you think they are. Like they were bred for a purpose, you know, decades, centuries ago or whatever. And I think that's the big problem is, you know, these, like you said, people are getting these dogs thinking they're these sweet animals and they don't really understand how to deal with it when they actually come to fruition with how they were meant to be as a real dog, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that would be
it's
a better education, you know?
Again, like it's like you were saying too, David, it comes down to the breeders in those regards. Cause at least with a breeder, you could like, you know, they could say, hey, yeah, like this dog's, you know, parents, its grandparents, you know, the parents before that, they were cuddly. They were nice, friendly dogs. They never, you know, did any of those things. Or you get the breeder that says, no, these dogs are bred here to chase and kill and, you know, do this, and they need to be owned by specific people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the breeders have to be the ones with that information, because otherwise people don't know. And unfortunately, we know that most people don't get these dogs from the best breeders. I know a lot of Malinois breeders. I know a lot of German Shepherd breeders, know a lot of Rottweiler breeders, know a lot of Cane Corso breeders. I don't know one pit bull breeder, you know. I mean, I could maybe name one pit bull breeder, but it's like, you know what I mean? So it's like there's not like people out here breeding. There is, but like I don't know these kennels off the heart. And the average pet owner sure as shit doesn't. You know, you could even go on Kijiji, or well, not Kijiji, but Facebook, and do a German Shepherd search and find a kennel that's selling well-bred German Shepherds. But again, pit bulls, you go on Facebook and search that, you're going to find every backyard breeder from, you know, here to Texas kind of thing, right? So it's that's the or you're going to get it from a rescue that tells you one story about the dog when meanwhile it's actually got this other story going on. You know, it's so that's the difficult part there.
Yeah. That really is, I think, also a lot of the problem is like some of the issues that are in our rescue system, and like how to possibly even begin to like reform those things and get people like out of this state of mind of like needing to push off these dogs with problem behaviors. Like just with the influx of dogs in rescue to begin with, like there is a serious conversation I think that needs to be had of like what is the standard of dogs we keep in the rescue system versus we put our resources and time into the ones that like actually are really good dogs already. Like we have a lot of rescues we work with, and listen, like they're amazing, wonderful people, but like they'll call us and they want to send these dogs to us for training to like rehome them, and they're like willing to give us, you know, $3,000 or whatever, like train this dog, help us rehome it and stuff like that. And I'll look at the dog and just be like, this dog is going to be so difficult for somebody to own, right? This dog is going to be so difficult to train in the first place. It's still going to have the freaking problem behaviors. And I would really like, let's really look at like that $3,000 you're looking to invest in this dog, like could be so much more effectively put into something else that's going to benefit a ton of dogs, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's also one of the bigger issues. And as we're seeing more, like I saw just the other day, there's like a lawsuit. Somebody's suing a rescue or something like that for rehoming a dog that wound up attacking this girl, and the girl had to like lose her arm, I believe, because of it. And she's suing the rescue for I think like $400,000 or something like that.
Oh boy.
And
I saw that.
You know, as stuff like that happens, it's like I think the hot seat is going to get put on rescues a little bit more of like how much more accountability there is for, you know, not properly disclosing this kind of stuff, which I think is going to kind of spark some of that change that really should be happening to help people just have better dogs, you know, have less problematic genetic messes of dogs just like running around the streets.
I think that they, I don't know exactly what that's about. Why they push those dogs so strongly, and they're willing to invest so much money and time into those dogs when there's, you know, 5 dogs lined up right behind that dog that, you know, you could spend a fraction of that money on training, and they're going to live a long, happy life with the owner right away, you know, with the thousands of dollars in further investments and stuff. And I don't know, you know, again, it's good on the rescue if they're willing to pay for that kind of thing. They don't even, you know, they don't necessarily want to pay for that kind of thing, right? Yeah. When I first started training here in Calgary, can you hear me still?
Yep.
Okay, cool. I thought the sound cut out. But when I started training here in Calgary, when I first moved the business here, we started working with a rescue, and they wanted to, I think that the max they wanted to pay was like $60 for private training sessions, and they were only willing to like commit to paying for one private training session, and this would be for like aggressive dogs, like
Yeah.
elderly, aggressive, pit bulls and stuff that just came from Mexico. It's like, what the fuck? It's like 10-year-old dogs fresh off the boat from Mexico. It's
Yeah.
like, you can't do anything with them. It's like,
Yeah.
this dog is, it's unfortunate. Right.
Yeah.
But it's, I think I just saw a post recently too, that like, they're selling these rescue dogs for, somebody asked what's the average selling price of a rescue, and people ranged everywhere from $350 all the way up to thousands of dollars for rescue dogs. Somebody commented they paid like $6,000 or $4,000 for their Chinese food market rescue dog, and the rescue sold it to them saying that it had extra feed because it was from China.
Yeah.
And all this stuff, and people are paying this money for these dogs, right? So people are paying for the stores. And did the dog even come from China? I bet this dog is just backyard bred somewhere in fucking Tennessee and sold as, it was a corgi. She posted a picture. It was like a corgi.
Yeah.
And somebody commented on it. They're like, I call fake because I don't think there's much good eating on a corgi.
Yeah.
And I laughed my ass off because it's so true. It's like, they're selling a story, some of these rescues, and that's what they're doing. They're selling these dogs.
Yeah.
You can call it rescue, but you're trading money for, a product, and that's selling, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, that's what they're doing.
Yeah. Oh man, we're just going from hot topic to hot topic here. So this is something kind of funny that happened somewhat recently. I don't even know if I told you about this or not.
I don't think so.
This actually was pretty funny. This is something I woke up to maybe a month or two ago. So there's some sort of rescue organization. I don't know who they are, but some sort of rescue organization in the States here, that their big marketing ploy is that these are like dogs from the meat trade in, same deal, like China or wherever the fuck, right? They're going and getting these dogs from the meat trade and then like bringing them back to America and then rehabbing them and rehoming them and stuff like that. And one of my trainers got in like I wouldn't even call it an argument, but like I think she made a comment on a group somewhere. She was talking to somebody. This person joined into the conversation, and she just kind of made a snarky comment of like, oh well, the person that's funding the meat trade like joined the conversation or something like that.
Oh my god!
Exactly. Yeah.
And
exactly
basically
it,
what
though,
she
right?
was like snarkily implying was like you're going over to these countries, right? Like first off, like we got so many dogs here that need help. Like let's maybe focus on those for right now instead of like going to other countries and pulling more dogs into the States here, right? Where you're not even going to make an impact on what's going on over there. You're just making yourself feel better that you have this dog that was from the meat trade that you saved, right? But like you're needing to buy those dogs. You know what I mean? Like you go over there and you need to purchase those dogs from people that are selling them for meat. You're just buying them for yourself, right? To rescue them, right? But you're indirectly funding that. Whatever. Kind of a funny little, like, in my opinion, right? Like little kind of snarky backhanded comment. That's very true, right? But anyways, so I woke up and I don't know who the fuck this person is. This person doesn't know us or anything like that. I got a DM on the Miracle Canine Instagram. I woke up, I'm reading it, and I'm like half awake laying in bed reading this fucking novel of a message, right? Of this person like, I don't know if you know what your trainers are out saying, and then tried to give me this huge sob story on like she doesn't understand the meat trade and this and that, and I really think that you need to have a conversation with her and blah 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 because she's making your company seem so bad and blah blah blah. And I think I just replied back like this isn't even like, I don't even know who the fuck you are, right? Like, I don't know anything about your guys' discussion you're having. Like, just go away, right? Like, in the most polite way possible. And then she tried to like threaten me. She's like, well, my page has 20,000 followers and my partner's page has 90,000 followers. And well, your attitude really makes me feel like I need to use those followers and talk about what you guys say and do, blah, blah. And she's like weaponizing her fan base because she was so mad about this one little snarky comment that they made. I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like the trainer was like, I'm sorry. Like I didn't mean to like drag units. I was like, no. This is just psycho people that are just stirring up fucking nonsense and just have nothing better to do with their time, and that shit drives me so fucking crazy. And there is no fucking way I'm going to try to appease this person by saying, yeah, I'll have a conversation with this trainer so she doesn't send her 100,000 followers. Oh yeah, she was saying, I think she said at one point in it, like, they're going to leave bad reviews on your Google page. It's like, okay, so you're going to weaponize your followers to leave fake reviews and attack our page because you're so mad that somebody stated a comment that's actually true. So ridiculous.
Who else do we know in the dog industry that does that?
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting, hey? It is interesting, isn't it, how the rescue community and the force-free community will do that kind of thing, right? I mean, I guess the balance training community probably does the same thing too, I suppose. So, but yeah, like back to your point, it's like, I'm sure maybe I'm wrong, and maybe we are ignorant and really don't know the meat trade, because I certainly don't. So I'm certainly, talking from a point of not knowing, but I have to assume, knowing what I know, I have to assume that when they're in the meat markets in China, and those guys see them white guys coming down the aisle, they're upping those prices of those dogs right away, right? Those dogs go from, whatever yen to like 50 yen to, 150 yen. Probably,
they're just trying to make some money, and they don't give a fuck if the dog is going off to be in the meat trade or going to the United States of America to get sold for a profit somewhere. Like, they don't give a fuck.
Yeah, it's...
Oh boy!
I actually recently went to Florida here for a big dog thing, which I guess we can talk more about. But one of the things I got the opportunity to do while I was down there was I got to visit a rescue down in Florida. I believe it's in Palm Beach is where it was, and it's one of the largest rescues. I don't want to call it out or anything, but it's one of the largest rescues. I believe it is the largest no-kill rescue in the U.S., I believe.
Okay.
And it's down in Palm Beach, so you can kind of imagine the clientele and stuff that they're getting for these dogs down there. So I got the opportunity to visit there, and they took us on a big tour of this place, right? And bless these people. They're trying to do good work, especially all the people that work there. But I can't help but when I went there, I couldn't help but just think it's just a big dog collection facility. That's all they're doing there, right?
For sure.
Dog collecting and selling, right? That's what they're doing. And we were there, and it's this massive facility, really well funded. People like Rachel Ray, the Trumps and stuff have all put money into this place.
Yeah.
And like we're walking through, and there's dogs like, I don't want to say they're crammed into rooms or anything, but they're definitely like, 4 dogs in tiny rooms kind of thing, right?
Sure.
They walk us through like these bunkhouses, essentially what they are. It's like you're walking through bunkhouses, barracks, and they've got like 4 dogs per little cubicle. And sure enough, like some of these dogs are getting into fights and stuff. They actually walked us, I don't know why they did this, but they walked us through their infirmary, like their veterinarian bunk. And you could see some of these dogs were getting into fights and stuff and pretty fucked up from each other, right?
Yeah.
And so, we're seeing that. And then we keep going through this facility, and I'm seeing dogs that are like, it's in Florida. It's like 30 degrees out. And there's dogs out in exercise pens with no water out in the sun kind of thing, right? Yeah. Maybe they're not there long, but they're panting. Sure. They're hot. There's crates and stuff, wire crates outside. Like, they're over capacity. They have these massive bunkhouses filled with dogs. Yeah. And then they're still putting more dogs into places that there's like, I look into corners of like utility closets, and there's dog crates in there with a dog in it or something. Mm-hmm. And then we're getting this tour of this facility, and this lady, we're walking around, and she says this jokingly. She says, we have about 100 dogs from a Chinese meat market, and we just have no idea where we're going to put them. And she's laughing about it. And I'm meanwhile, like, with her, I don't know where they're going to put them. But it's like they're just accumulating dogs, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're making good profit off of them too, making good money off of them as well.
Yeah.
Again, it was a nice place. It was a nice place, but I feel like it's one of those things where once you get into that rescue business, it seems like a lot of people go a little too far with it or get a little too carried away. They go over capacity.
Yeah. I mean, it's so tough, right? Because it's like, damn, like over capacity. You got a place like that where, like, yeah, a nice place. Like, the dogs don't give a fuck that it's a nice place, because, like, what does a nice place mean to the dog is that they could hold more dogs, right?
Yeah,
and
like they got murals and paintings on all
it
the
looks
walls.
nice for the people that come in, right? I'm sure they have cozy little areas to go chill and like meet the dogs and stuff that you might want to adopt. But like in the end of the day, they're sitting in the same fucking kennel that any other rescue or shelter on the face of the planet has dogs sitting in also, right? And it's so hard because like go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, yeah, even their kennels are interesting because they were like, just rooms with like glass windows.
Yeah.
They're not like cage wire kennels or anything for the
Sure.
most part until you get to those dogs that were over capacity. They also had, it was very cool there though. They had this large kind of open concept sanctuary. It's almost like if you've ever been to like the what's it called, the animal kingdom at Disney World or whatever,
Yeah.
where you like look out over to the savannah kind of thing.
Yeah.
Looks like that. And it's just their dog play yard, and they'll just let dogs run free out there. And it's
Yeah.
really nice. That's really beautiful.
That is
but
really
again,
cool. Yeah.
then you go through the infirmary, you go through that vet room, and you see what that can kind of lead to with when you start, cramming that many dogs when you don't know their temperaments and stuff in one place.
Yeah. This is such a in internet. If you're listening to this, like, don't fucking shoot me in the face right now. But like, it would be so interesting to see in a hypothetical world if every rescue had their capacity, right, of X dogs, where that amount of dogs they truly could just properly care for, right? They could provide good enrichment, good stimulation, right? Medical needs, food needs, all that kind of stuff. Make sure that while they were in the shelter system, they weren't just cooped up and they were still living a good life in there, right? It would be interesting to see if every single one of these organizations had that number, right? And once they hit over that number, they had to look at all of the dogs that were in and say, which one of these is going to be the most difficult to adopt out? And they immediately put in place like a euthanasia policy for that, right? Which rescues do anyway. So this isn't so fucking crazy that I'm saying by any means. But if that really was the policy and that's how they handled it, I would be so interested over the course of a couple of years to see what kind of dogs were getting put out there. And in addition to that, the ones that were in the shelter system, we could still all confidently say they were living a good life, even if they lived out the next 3 years in that system, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough, right? But again, I think that's the thing is people aren't going to stop buying dogs. Just like, they're not going to stop getting dog training. People aren't going to stop buying dogs. So unfortunately, somebody has to fund that, whether it's the backyard breeders, the reputable breeders, which obviously can't keep up, or the rescues, which can bring in an unlimited capacity of dogs and just keep them coming, right?
Yeah. Interesting. Man. Yeah. Well, segueing off the difficult conversation. So what? Actually, no. You brought it up. So you were in Florida. You were there for Ivan's school, right? Did you go to Ivan's school?
No. I have not
didn't?
gone to Ivan's school. No.
Oh, God.
No. I
did.
have not been to Ivan's school. No.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
No,
What did you
I
go down there for?
I went down there for a pet expo that was in Orlando. They do something called the Global Pet Expo.
Okay.
So one of my good friends and my mentor in dog training, he owns a big facility in Arkansas, and me and him decided we wanted to go down there just to get some new contacts, new clientele and stuff like that down there at this pet expo. And so we made a big trip of it, went down there for about a week kind of thing, and spent a few days at the expo. That was a lot of fun. There was a lot of really cool stuff there. It was huge. It had to have been like 1,000 vendors or something like that. I don't even know, but it was crazy. They had like Dog Trail was there. They had there's lots of vendors. I would have liked to see more e-collar vendors because I think Dog Trail and Sport Dog were the only two that were there. Yeah. But there was a lot of cool vendors in the pet industry. I made some good contacts, for some products and stuff that we want to start carrying, like leashes and stuff like that. So it was a worthwhile trip. So that was pretty awesome being able to do that. While we were there too, we got to go down to, like I said, Palm Beach. We went down there and we actually got to visit the sheriff's department and stuff down there in Palm Beach. We got to get a tour of their canine training facility. Very cool place down there because Palm Beach is obviously a very wealthy kind of area. I believe it's one of the wealthiest places in the U.S., if I'm not mistaken. And so their police department is well funded. So they have a very nice canine program. Are you familiar with Justin Rigney by chance?
Not really, no.
Okay, he's a trainer and he does a lot of work with them, and he's just kind of popular on social media, I guess. But he does a lot of work with them and stuff, and they have a very nice facility down there. So that was very cool being able to tour that and see that. Got to check out their aviation unit, and they actually were able to take us for a helicopter ride. Nice. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that or not, but we actually got to go up with the police department on a helicopter ride. And while we were up there, we were actually like following some people that were, trying to rob they were doing cash or check cashing robberies, and we were able to follow them and watch them on the camera and stuff. So that was really, really cool.
Yeah.
Got to go fly over Donald Trump's house, fly past his plane and stuff, fly over where Jeffrey Epstein used to live.
Jesus.
Got like
Oh,
just the whole
man.
Palm Beach tour. It was really cool.
Yeah.
No, it was cool. We got like a really cool tour while we were down there. So that was awesome. And again, being from Canada, and it was like it was pretty much dead of winter still at that point here. So going down there and it's 30 degrees was just, well, I guess 80 degrees was really, really nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was awesome. But it was a good trip, a good productive trip. And again, I went down there with my mentor, Rob, and it's always good to see him and catch up with him and stuff. So
Yeah. You said
that was
Rob
pretty
is in-
awesome.
he's in
But no, I
Arkansas?
never done Ivan's school.
Yeah.
Sorry, say that again.
Oh, I said so. You said Rob is in Arkansas. What is his company's name?
Joint Forces Canine is the company he owns. So they got a pretty big facility in Arkansas,
Yeah.
in the Northwest, I believe is where it is. Just a beautiful facility up there. And he's the one that kind of got me into dog training. So he's been a good friend for a long time, 6.5 years, almost 7 years. I think he's been a good friend. And he gifted me my first Malinois.
Oh yeah.
I was able to get my first Malinois through him because he used to do, well, he still does, I think. They do police breeding programs and selling of police dogs and stuff. So he had
Yeah.
imported some dogs from Belgium, I believe, at the time, and a few of them were just kind of washouts. They weren't really suitable for the work kind of thing. And he had these dogs up for sale. We ended up becoming good friends at this time, and he ended up gifting me the dog to kind of start my path into dog training. So that was actually my first foray into owning a dog on my own. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah. That's sweet. The first Malinois, man. I remember.
Well, that's the thing. It's like he was my first dog, and it's
Yeah.
a Malinois, so I really had to kind of dive headfirst into the training,
Yeah.
right? And so that's what started my path. But like I said, 6.5 years ago or something, that's what started me into dog training, was getting this dog and having to. And he was not he wasn't like a high drive. Again, that's why he was washed out. He wasn't like a crazy high drive Malinois, but he was very nervous. He was skittish,
Yeah.
and had a lot of behaviors in that regards that I had to really work through and navigate. So it was awesome. Like I said, it ended up getting me into dog training, and it's really cool.
Hell yeah. So 6.5, 7 years, that's a pretty substantial time to be in the industry, obviously. So what currently, over those 6 or 7 years, I love asking new trainers, not new trainers, just trainers in general, this question. What has you like really excited in the dog training world right now? Because like obviously, like I know in my case, like things can get sometimes so mundane, as you do things for so long, and especially working with the same types of issues and clients and this and that. And I've always said, like, I have the luxury of, because we have staff, I have a business, this, that, I could make sure I don't get myself too like bored or stagnant with things just through ping-ponging through different aspects of that business, and helping out with different parts of it, and like specializing in this for a little bit, then this for a little bit, and stuff like that, which obviously you as a business owner have the luxury of as well. But what currently has you like really kind of pumped up and motivated?
Yeah, I think, again, and you mentioned like Ivan School. I think for me, that's kind of what it is. It's, I'm kind of deep into that Ivan cult right now, and in that rabbit hole of training, trying to train through play and aspects of that.
Yeah.
Again, I haven't gone to Ivan's school or anything, but I certainly have taken, I think, every course he has online.
Yeah.
I've taken, and I definitely do want to go to the school. It's just a timing thing. It's really the biggest factor for that. So that's my next goal, is to hopefully be able to go through his certification course here at the end of the year. I'm hoping, and accomplish that. But as far as getting excited about it, like that's, just trying to navigate that and take the concepts I've learned from his online courses, as well as just, grasping concepts from other trainers and stuff and applying them, being able to experiment with the board and trains and stuff here, experiment with these different techniques, has been exciting, because it's been cool to watch the differences in some of the dogs I've been working with these new methods and stuff. And I think that's what I've been most excited about, is just experimenting with these new methods in general. So
what are
for me, that's the most exciting, I think.
So you said you've taken a decent amount of his courses and stuff online. What are some of the types of courses that he's currently offering online? I actually haven't looked into them.
Yeah. Most of his courses are sport-based. So most of his courses are going to focus on sport work, and that's something that I've been diving into since I recently got another Malinois. Actually, I got her about a year ago now. So, well, just under a year ago. No, a year ago. So she's a little over a year now, but she's going to be my sport Malinois for PSA. And since I got her, I kind of started to dive more into his sport stuff, and that's kind of what really led me down the pathway into getting into this stuff was that sport stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But he does have some pet related content on there as well. As far as courses and stuff goes, he's got one course that I recommend people take called the Make Your Dog Somebody course, and that's a really good course.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's got his two kind of cornerstone courses, which are going to be the Chase and Catch and the Possession Games courses.
Yeah.
And those are like the two must-have Ivan courses kind of thing. If you're going to purchase any course, those are the two must-have. And I think those two courses are really like what a lot of his training branches off of.
Mm-hmm.
There's, of course, much more to it than that. But if you're familiar with those courses and you kind of apply those concepts, you can really kind of see some unique, interesting things, you know?
Yeah.
And again, just going further down the rabbit hole with his stuff. So I've been, following other certified Ivan trainers and stuff and watching the way that they do things, watching the way that they interact with dogs and seeing some of the differences and stuff in the way that they do things. It's very cool. It's very, like I said, different and very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think, for the average pet owner and stuff like that, it's one of those things where even the average trainer, it's very different than what the average trainer is going to tell you, right?
Sure.
A lot of his stuff. And Ivan talks about that. He says that, and people I think a lot of people bash him and stuff for that, for like saying his thing's wildly different than the way people train currently. But a lot of it is very different, but it's a lot of the same concepts and stuff, of course, but it is different. So it's cool. Just a lot of fun to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. I think I remember when the Possession Games, I think it was just a DVD or whatever, came out years ago. And that is one of the few that I watched. I watched that one. I think I started watching his first one on teaching like the competition heel. And I think he came out with a recent one on like a part 2 or something like that too. I haven't seen yet. But I remember the Possession Games was really interesting because like, at the time, I think when it came out, really the tug work and all that kind of stuff that a lot of people were doing in sport work was very much around like the concept of how like Michael Ellis was doing it with the like there's this clear picture of what playing with your dog should look like, right? You should be tugging and you're creating a chase game and you're teaching the dog to always want to bring it back to you and this and that. And Ivan's was so interesting from the standpoint of it's like not all dogs like to play like that, and why do we need them to play like that? It's like if the dog really enjoys, doing victory laps with the toy every time they win it from you and doesn't immediately bring it back and likes a little bit of chase and all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, the goal of using the play is to be able to reinforce things. And if that's more reinforcing to the dog, why would we not use that? Why would we try to cram them into this box of something that they're not as into, And I remember that was a very interesting concept. And I think even when it first came out, I think my brain probably immediately went to like, no, that's stupid. That doesn't make sense, right? Because I didn't understand it well enough, right? And it's so funny because like indirectly, as you work with dogs for longer and longer and you see dogs that don't fit into that mold, or for example, there's a dog that I've been working with that I just did a lesson with the other day. I've been doing some in-home classes with, really, really skittish, fearful dog, right? And, the dog at this point listens to commands. He's fine. Like, he's trained, right? But like, we want to give him an outlet to start just like having fun more, and have the owners have a place where they could really build just like a little bit stronger of a relationship with him and help him overcome some of those fears a little bit better. So we started playing. I was like, what drives your dog crazy? Like, is there anything that your dog really, really, really likes, right? And they were like, yeah, like once every couple weeks, like we'll play this game in the house where we just chase him all around the house, right? And he'll just like run away from us, and we'll do they got this little round table. They're like, we'll do like 20 fucking laps around this table of us just chasing him around, and he's having the time of his life, right? Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, they couldn't get this dog to like chase a ball or do anything like that, and he would just lose interest in games that they were playing with him. So we're like, all right, well, let's take him outside. And I was like, just do that with him right now. Like whatever you guys generally will do in the house where you fucking chase him around and get him all hyped up, like do it. And this dog was like so freaked out of just new people being in the house. So he was very apprehensive initially. It was myself and somebody else that was there. And they started doing it. And like, he's kind of like, not sure what's going on. And then eventually this dog just fucking lets loose and they're just fucking chasing him around and they're losing their breath because they're running around all over the place. And there's like a stick on the ground and he kind of picked it up at one point and then they chased him. And then finally he got the stick and threw it and he wanted to grab it. And then they started chasing him again. And he just had, long story short, he just had so much fun doing that. But that's the dog where if you tried to teach him through the traditional ways of play, right? Which is like, you have to give this thing to me, drop it right away, right? All that kind of stuff. Like that wasn't for him. That wasn't what he found reinforcing,
Yeah, and that's the stuff that's like the kind of thing that I love and really gets me down that rabbit hole of Ivan outside the sport stuff, more into the pet stuff is using those play concepts. Are those dogs loud in the background?
No, I can't hear them all.
Okay, perfect, cool. But yeah, using those play concepts for pet dogs has been so much fun, and seeing those kinds of dogs, right, where it's like, the owner can't get them to play, or the owner, thinks that there's a certain way that they have to be playing with them. Meanwhile, the dog wants to play a different way. And then being able to, like you said, like that dog was running around and grabbed a stick or whatever, being able to channel that into productive play. Yeah. And I think, again, I don't want to speak because I'm not, I haven't taken Ivan's course. I don't want to speak for him. But what I've been doing and what I've found has worked is applying the concepts of his games, chase and catch, applying the concepts of his games, like possession games, to turn that into a productive game, right? And I think that's the whole purpose there, is using those concepts to make a productive game with an actual objective, right? Where, like, when the owner's chasing the dog around the yard, a lot of fun and stuff, and I don't know, like, I wouldn't discourage that or anything, but I would want to turn that into a productive game, have some sort of, have some sort of objectives, some sort of rules you can apply to the game and stuff, right? And that's the fun part about it. But even beyond that, like, getting dogs in that, for me, like I said, with these new concepts and trying to experiment with these new concepts, when I used to get a dog in that would go and try and chase a car, for instance, right? I'll bring them in for their, their intake or whatever. We'll go out on the road, and sure enough, they'll go launch at a car. And, before I would just put a prong collar, e-collar on and give them a correction for it almost right out of the gate kind of thing, right? Now I see that. Now I get a dog that comes in, maybe wants to chase cars or something. I'm like, hey, this dog wants to chase. Let's play a game. Concepts of impulse control. Teach these concepts during that game. Then go out and go back to the cars again and see how does the dog behave. Did they apply those concepts learned in that game to now no longer chasing cars? Yeah, maybe I still need to apply a correction or a consequence for that behavior. Of course, probably that's still going to happen. But the dog has a better way of understanding that. I'm not muddying my relationship with the dog at that moment. Yep. So it's just seeing those things, I just had a dog in really kind of wired young Doberman, just like focused on everything in the environment but its owner, and very focused on squirrels. As soon as a squirrel would run by, productive play, which I then used to train the dog. And I think that's like one of the important concepts with it, is like it's the whole concept of training the dog in drive. Yeah. So through play, you're training the dog in drive. And that's the whole thing, is like, when we deal with problems with dogs, it's when they're in drive. Yeah. It's when they're in arousal. So you're never dealing with a dog problem that's not in drive. So, it only makes sense to train the dog in drive. That includes, training the impulse control while the dog is in drive. And that's the whole idea, I think, behind Ivan's concepts of training with these games. Well, that's one of the concepts, I should say, is being able to train the dog while they're at that peak state of arousal. And again, it's like if you can't get the dog, because I used to think, I'd get dogs in for boarding trains and they're nervous or they're, a little timid or even aggressive, and I shut the aggressive behavior down immediately. But then I never see the dog enter drive again for the entire training program. And I realize now that that's an issue, because the dog's going to go back home and they're going to go into drive. Sure. And then we never dealt with it. We never taught the dog how to deal with that in drive. So you have to be training again with that arousal in place, right? That's the only way to do it in a way that makes the most sense and is going to be long-term effective, I think. So that's just another one of the interesting concepts, I think, of Ivan's training methods that I've applied to the pet dog stuff.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you brought up about the training and drive, and then, suppressing it too quickly where you never see it again and can't really work on it. And it's like, well, like, obviously, like, you never saw it again, right? So, like, it, you could say, like, oh, well, like, it kind of worked, right? Like, the problem behavior went away, that. but knowing that once the dog goes back into the home and, maybe 1/24 of their day is training as opposed to 100% of their day, right? You're going to have to address it again once it goes into the house. Or, you could spend a little bit more time teaching the dog to loosen up and having more areas where they can enter that drive. That's a really interesting point. And it's really interesting too, because I think there's this line then you kind of start to teeter on where it's like, some people will go like, if this is like the traditional way that a lot of pet dog trainers would train their clients, and this is like the Ivan way, right? A lot of people will go from like here to here to here to here. And, they're like, all right, well, I'm going to switch from doing like all this was totally wrong, right? Like I'm never going to do it again. And I'm only going to do things in this fashion now, right? And then they could shoot themselves in the foot by, starting to overcomplicate their program a lot and not understanding their clients' individual needs. And if they're going to want to be able to do a lot of kind of the different types of things that are going to be involved in that process, as opposed to having it just another tool in your toolbox of this is another great solution for some dogs that maybe you can't suppress away the behavior. Because we definitely see plenty of dogs where it's like, you could correct this dog all day long for that thing that they're doing when they're all jacked up, but you're only going to get marginal improvement in that behavioral issue. You know what I mean? And maybe that's where we could start to lean into a little bit more of this side of things. Or you have that client that just really kind of wants the call it quick fix, call it whatever, that doesn't want to have to play all these games with their dogs and do all this kind of stuff. And they just want to correct the behavior and make the behavior stop. And you can lean more into that side of things and kind of work at it more of a spectrum as opposed to that like on off switch way of like, this is the right way. This is the wrong way,
That's the tough thing. Right. And like I said, I'm not that deep into the rabbit.
Whoa. We lost him. I feel like his internet's getting a little shoddy over there.
Yeah.
All right, hang on.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back, people. All right. We're good. Wait, do I need to hit it here again?
No.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Perfect. No problem.
Good?
We're good. Yeah,
We're good.
Yeah, it is one of those things. Again, it's what I think a lot of people that are in that Ivan realm or that Ivan corner, and even Ivan gets a lot of flack for is I don't know if I'm not all the way there or anything. I'm not that familiar with what Ivan actually teaches. I just know what I know from his courses and what I've applied and stuff. But he literally says, like, you can't just apply his methods as another tool in the toolbox, right? He gets a lot of shit from other trainers for that, right? Because again, the way he talks about it, the way he trains is like it's vastly different, you know. But like you said, if you're applying it different concepts to different, like you said, if there's one client that wants a quick fix and you apply the quick fix versus another client that wants to go all the way with their dog, or maybe I decide, hey, you need to go through this full program to actually truly rehabilitate your dog or whatever. Knowing how to do that is definitely, like I said, important. And I would never say like one way is like the only way to do it or anything.
Sure.
But that is something that Ivan would say, right? It's like, and that's what, again, he gets a lot of hate for from other trainers. And it's same thing with the sport side of it. He does the same thing with the sport side. And that's why a lot of sport people openly do not like Ivan, like even like in my, because I'm now in like PSA and stuff like that. And so even people in my club, I can tell they have a disdain for him because of the way it's like, no, his way is the way to do it. The way you're doing it is just fucking wrong. And you should stop doing it that way. And the more I work with my dog using what I've learned from Ivan's course and stuff, the more I see what these other people are doing is fucking wrong. And he's like, Ivan is totally right about it. And they're spending so much time to teach these different things that, that are just, the dog's not even learning, or that they're teaching totally incorrectly and going to have to reteach. And they're, I see trainers with like 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old dogs dealing with the same issues over and over, where it's like, with Ivan's concepts, like those issues never happen. You can deal with those issues quickly. And again, like I'm speaking out of line here because I'm not fully into it. I'm not certified by him, and I don't have any titles on my dogs. I've never competed with my dog. She's still only a year and 3 months old, so she's not old enough. But what I do see working with my dog, what I do see even now having other trainers to compare the dogs, because I have other trainers working under me, I can compare the way they train dogs versus the way I work with some of the dogs, and I see the differences. And there's clear differences, right? There's clear differences in terms of like, the dog's behavior, the way the dog exhibits behaviors and stuff like that. And and the quickness of the learning of the dog and all of those things, right? And those are all, again, I attribute that to what I've learned through Ivan's stuff. So
Yeah.
there's again, it's certainly an interesting rabbit hole to go down, and I certainly recommend trainers go down it.
Yeah.
But it's gonna confuse you. It's gonna definitely, there's some trainers that are gonna get into it and they're gonna be like, what the fuck? This is totally out to lunch on what I thought before. And it's like, yeah, but once you start learning it and then learning how to apply the concepts effectively and efficiently, it's not, some people think that you have to spend, this is a comment I got from somebody in our club one time with my puppy, when she was young. It was like, I don't want to spend, a 15-minute training session teaching three heels or doing 3 heel commands and then having to play with the dog for the rest of that time.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not really how it works, but people do have that conception of it, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things, but I do think, like I said, if you're going to go down that Ivan rabbit hole, I think you have to go all the way with it. I don't think you can just dabble in it, because I think then you're going to get into trouble. I think if you're just dabbling in it, you're going to get confused. You're going to confuse dogs. You're going to confuse owners. So you have to really go all the way with it.
I think one thing that he does a good job with that I really like is, like, and again, I guess I'm talking out of line as well because I've never taken any of his courses before, right? But it seems like a lot of his concepts and things that he does are rooted around really, really, really basic fundamental learning, right? Learning theory.
That's it.
Like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's master the basics,
Yes.
and everything else is easy, right? It's like,
Yeah.
that's all it is.
And I don't know where it came from, right? Because like my first introduction into like dog training was sport dog training and was like the Michael Ellis stuff, right? So I feel like I would watch like fucking, like I talk about like, obviously the Power Training Dogs of Food and Advanced Concepts and Motivation and like some of those DVDs that were just like goddamn textbooks, and I would just sit there with my notebook just watching it over and over and over again, just like writing notes down. And all of that stuff was very, very centered around just basic fundamental learning theory. Let's understand how animals learn. Let's understand what motivates them. And let's break down these things we need to teach into, bite-sized steps that are accomplishable. But you've got to spend all this time on the foundational stuff so that you could do that very effectively, right? And I think Ivan's stuff seems like, even like his biggest thing he's been pushing is the e-collar stuff, right? Is you shouldn't do e-collar stuff this way, you should do it this way. And, yes, obviously he gets very extreme with the like every other way is super wrong, which I don't disagree with by any means, but it's like whatever, like, people can do what they want to do, obviously. But like people have such a hard time grasping just the concept of using an e-collar for both negative reinforcement and positive punishment. Like that's literally it, right? And that's all he's saying.
Yes.
And everybody's like, you're not telling us how you're doing it. You're not telling us how you do it. And he's just like, just understand those two concepts and you know how I do it.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's no competition. But the sport world, it just feels like there's so many different camps of people that just want to really, 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 really overcomplicate all of the things they're doing to the nth degree, where it's just, to what Ivan has said a lot, is it's just like unnecessary,
Yes.
So I don't know.
Yeah. It's like you said, it's a lot of that. It's a lot of people just, I think people just kind of cling on to what they learn from others, but training has now become, like, especially e-collar training, it's so mystified, right? For the average owner to grasp these concepts. You have people out here saying like, your dog needs to have endorphins when they feel the e-collar. Your e-collar needs to be paired with dopamine and stuff. And it's like, it confuses people, and it confuses dogs too.
Yeah.
It does. And that's just it. Right. And I think it's one of those things like with Ivan that a lot of people hate, but for me, I enjoy it, the way that he says those things, like, his kind of, the way he says, like, like the way you're doing it, like I said, it's fucking stupid and it's wrong. And this is why. And then he lays it out. He lays out why that is and why it should be done this way or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that with anybody, really, with any trainers that can say that kind of thing. And again, it just makes people mad. But yeah, I see people teaching basic concepts and stuff like healing, for example. Like you mentioned, like he has his healing course part 1, and then years later, just recently, he released part 2, which I'm sure that confused a lot of people too, because there's some differences between those courses and stuff. But once once you see the way that he trains it, and once you apply those methods to train in the heel, And then you watch other people, they have to have a wall. They have to have like the food in certain spots are like in their armpit. They're spitting food out their mouth into the dog's mouth to teach it. And these things are just like, you sit there once you know a different way and you're just laughing at it. You're like, guys, why are you doing this? It doesn't need to be like this. And it's, the concepts, like I said, just get so crazy with certain people and certain things, and then going into the concept of like, not using food for training, which is one of Ivan's things. He uses mostly, toys and play and stuff in most of his training, although he does use food. That's a misconception, I think, too. But again, people think that there's this need that your dog has to be hungry before training, I know when I started doing PSA and stuff, people would talk about how like before training days and trial days, they wouldn't feed their dog the whole day. So they're pissed off on the day of training. Yeah. It's like, they're like think about that logically for a second. Like what athlete do you know? What kind of performance of any sort would be given at a good level if the dog is hungry, or if you're hungry, if the thing doing it, the organism doing that performance is hungry or thinking about something else, right? Yeah. And it's again, those concepts are argued back and forth by trainers. Other trainers will say when a dog is hungry, they're thinking the best because they're going to go hunt the best stuff. It's like, I don't know about any of that. I just you just want the dog to be happy and having a good time doing it. And I think that that's one of the simple fundamentals of Ivan's stuff is like you want the dog to be happy and the owner to be happy and having a good time doing it. Yeah. And once you just think about that at the fundamental core of your training, is the dog having a good time, is the owner having a good time? And I'm not saying like, when we're dealing with aggressive dogs, there's going to be situations where neither the owner or the dog are having a good time. There is. But if that's the overwhelming majority of the dog's just getting hammered constantly, the owner's having to hammer the dog constantly, there's going to be an issue. It's not going to last. And, again, just keeping that at the forefront of my training now has made so much differences, both with my sport dog. That's, I think, like a huge part of it. And pet dogs I train. Because again, I see people in the sport world that are getting frustrated with their dogs. They're getting mad at their dogs while training stuff. And I couldn't even imagine. I just couldn't imagine. I've had my Malinois for a year and 3 months now or something like that. And she's doing really well, but I've never once gotten frustrated or mad at her during training with these methods of training, right? And same with, before when I would train with other methods and stuff like that, like I used to follow a lot of like, Sean O'Shea stuff, even like Gary Wilkes, who I still enjoy a lot of their things and their concepts, and I get the purposes of them. But before, when I used to train without knowing other ways, it would be, that's all it would be, it would be just kind of miserable for the dog and stuff. And it wouldn't last either. At the end of the day, it would be just constant management of some sort, right? Whether it's management by having the e-collar always on and, turned up or whatever the case is. And I realize those things don't really last. Those things don't work. And that's, again, I think that's one of the biggest things to keep in mind with that. So, yeah.
So you mentioned like Sean O'Shea and all those guys. So when you started in training, I know you mentioned your mentor, Rob, he has this obviously company. It sounds like he does a lot of like police canine work or more working dog stuff, obviously. When you started, was it more in that avenue, or was it more of just like the popular pet dog trainers at the time and stuff like that?
Yeah. Yeah. So Rob's place does mostly pet dog training. They do sport, or I should say police stuff. Especially back when I started with Rob, or when I got to know him. But they also did a lot of pet dog stuff, and that was really what piqued my interest, especially because, again, I had this Malinois. I really didn't learn a lot of training through Rob. I more learned about the business side of things from Rob, which was, I think, awesome because it allowed me to go explore my own avenues of training. I didn't go and learn from this one guy or these specific trainers that had these specific methods. And that's what I was stuck with. I was able to actually go home and, again, a lot of people probably shit on this stuff, but I was one of those YouTube trainers. I learned everything through YouTube. I started with Michael Ellis, 100%, all of Michael Ellis's, I got his puppy courses. I got his, his power of training with food and stuff course. All of these different things Michael, I was learning at the time. And then I started getting more into the pet dog stuff. So I started learning about Larry Crone, and Tyler Muto were the Michael Ellis, Larry Crone, and Tyler Muto were the three I originally started learning the most from. Which I think, man, if you're starting dog training, those are the three people you want to learn from when you're starting. They're going to make everything very, very simple. They're going to break everything down in a very, very clear way. And I think if you're going to learn, like I said, those are the three people to kind of learn from, right? And so learning their concepts and stuff, applying them with my dog, seeing it work, and then going out with my dog in the public and realizing people wanted their dogs trained like my dogs, I was able to turn that into how I learned how to train, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, Michael Ellis and Tyler Muto were the trainers that I kind of initially started learning the most from.
Yeah, that's funny. I had almost the same progression. So I started with the Michael Ellis stuff. That was like everything I did initially was like 100% to a T Michael Ellis's system of dog training. Like every client that came in, session number 1 was freaking marker charging. Then we're going over lures in the second session and this and that. And I'll tell you, like, especially with the board and trains and stuff I was working with at the time, those were some of the best, I feel like most motivated, happy dogs I feel like I was training at the time. I feel like I started running into a lot of issues where a lot of the clientele that came in, just like they were very like resistant to, and this was like 9 years ago or so, but like they were very resistant to like using food constantly with dogs, and they just wanted the dog to fucking walk on a leash for them and this and that, which is where I went directly to. I feel like Tyler was kind of coming on the scene right at that point, and I feel like he was doing cool work, and he was only like a 3-hour drive from me, so like he was like my mentor when I got started. Like he was a guy, I remember I called him up, this is before he had a big name for himself or anything. I was like, I want to fucking learn from you. And he was like, well, I don't really do shadow programs, but like you could pay me for an hour of time and come by. And then I wound up just going up there and just hanging out with him and became really good friends with his staff and him. And then that took me to, I feel like I started finding out about like, you know, Sean O'Shea and Jeff Gelman were like the other two big ones at the time. I started getting into their stuff and then playing around with it. But I feel like because I started with the foundation of like the Michael and Tyler, I feel like there's so much to, you learned the right, and when I say the right, I don't mean like more pressure, less pressure, this, that, be firmer on the dog, softer on the dog. I just mean like the stuff I was learning was like scientifically accurate, right? Like I had
the fundamentals.
I had a good understanding of the fundamentals where I was able to then look at when I got into those guys, hey, here are some things they're doing that just like don't align with science, basically, right?
Exactly.
Like
how dogs learn, right?
It just doesn't make sense, right? So like, but the things they were doing, I did have a lot of appreciation for at that time because they truly were, it was more the mindset of like, let's be really owner-centered with our training, right? And maybe the training itself wasn't as good, but the mindset of like how they were delivering information to people, I really, really enjoyed. So I kind of started going deep down that rabbit hole with things, I feel like, and figuring out ways to like take, like I think I still have somewhere like Sean's training dog with prong collar and e-collar DVDs. And I remember I looked at them and I was like, all right, well, what adjustments would need to be made to these in order to do it the same way, but have it actually be accurate and like follow the fundamentals of negative reinforcement or positive punishment with the e-collar training and stuff like that. And I think that was a very valuable tool to learn. I remember Tyler, one of the first times I went to him, because he pioneered a lot of that like conversational leash work and like doing a lot of the stuff with the pinch collar with the negative reinforcement. And I was like, how did you really get into all that kind of stuff? And I remember he was telling me, he's like, I literally just spent a large chunk of my time just playing games with myself where I would be like, let me just use a prong collar and pick random things to teach the dog to do and only do it with the prong collar and do it utilizing like negative reinforcement concepts and stuff, which is where he got into just all sorts of understanding of implementing negative reinforcement and like successive approximation and stuff like that to get the dog to do really complex tasks. And I was like, that's a really interesting concept because it gets you to really deeply understand that one tool, right? So I was like, how can we implement that with the e-collar in these cases? Because that's kind of what Sean and Jeff were doing. So then I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, like, how can I teach the dog to do miscellaneous tasks with e-collar? And I remember one of them in particular, I used negative reinforcement, like low stim, in order to teach this, like, aggressive Anatolian shepherd to, like, stick his face into a muzzle, right? And just miscellaneous tasks like that to get me to really understand those nuances of using the e-collar independently. Then, obviously, as you do that, you start running into, well, just using any one tool, obviously, is not a good idea. And it's so funny how trainers will go through that progression, and then I full circle kind of came back to the sports stuff. And it's like, let's blend both of these spectrums as best as possible. The concepts we like here, the concepts we like here, and create a system that can flourish utilizing both of those, you know? And Yeah, I don't know. I kind of went on a tangent there, but that was a
No,
lot of, I
I
feel like,
like
my journey with that kind of stuff.
I think that's the progression. It seems to me like a lot of trainers follow, like especially the trainers that have come out in the time frame that I've come around anyway, with like the wave of all the internet
Sure.
information. It seems like that seems to be a general progression. At least for a lot of trainers I know, they go into the Michael Ellis stuff, then they start going more into the, like I said, the Sean O'Shea kind of stuff. And I did the same thing. My progression was just like that. Lots of positive reinforcement, mostly, following Michael's programs with my original training, then shifting almost entirely shifting into more like a compulsion based kind of program.
Yeah.
Still layering in some of that food and stuff on there that I would use from
Sure.
Michael's stuff. And having those fundamentals, like you had said. So, but then when I started doing going full into and I think the reason this progression happens is because as trainers, we take on easy cases at first, and then we start getting the more difficult cases that we want to take on, and we need to learn these new concepts, right? And so we go into these new people like Sean O'Shea and stuff, right? And then I started applying his concepts and realizing, okay, there's some fallbacks here, there's some different issues and stuff here. And then again, going almost full circle. Now I'm kind of more into the Ivan stuff, so I do kind of have changed that progression a little bit. But it's back into more dog centric instead of human centric, right? And I think that's where it is. Like, it goes dog centric at first. You want to start by helping the dogs. Then you realize, oh crap, the owners are the ones that need help, and they're the ones struggling. So you go into the owner centric style of training. And then again, now it's like a mix of both dog centric and owner centric, and just knowing when and where to apply both concepts,
That's really,
and when it's appropriate to focus more on the dog's feelings and the human's feelings.
Yeah, no, that is 100%.
I think
I was going to say. I think a big problem that I'll see people do as far as that progression is concerned is they'll start the other way around with things, and they get super fucking thrown off by stuff, right? So people that start off with learning concepts that will, I don't want to say they'll work, right? Like if you buy Sean's DVD and you do all the things that Sean does in the DVD under the right circumstances with the right dog, without understanding the whys behind things, like it will work, right? But if you're learning things inaccurately and you're not learning the whys behind stuff, every time you run into a situation where you have a dog that doesn't quite fit the mold and you need to adjust a little bit, because all of us with all of our programs, right, have to make little adjustments here, little adjustments there, little adjustments here based on the environment, the dog, the owners, all of those types of things. But if you don't understand the whys, you're going to get yourself so fucking confused. And then what'll happen is instead of progressing what you're already doing and just fixing those things that are incorrect, what you do is you hop. Right? You hop to this next thing thinking this next thing will be the correct thing. And this is everything is wrong about it and completely inaccurate. Right? Then you'll hop to the next thing when you don't know the whys behind that and confuse yourself even more. And I just see it all the time where you get the people that, again, it's like, I'm all this, or I'm all this, or I'm all this, or I'm all this, So.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, it's like, I couldn't imagine, honestly, being a trainer that starts in the industry, learning from, like, let's say people like Sean O'Shea, or Gelman, right, or Jeff Gelman, right? Like, if you're starting your training journey like that, like that's going to be very difficult to to climb back from that to some extent. I have to imagine. I'm sure some people do, but it's again, I wonder about like the people that continue to stay in that methodology, and obviously it's working for them and they're happy with the results. Their clients and stuff are happy with the results. But it's like there's definitely like even I guess like trainers that train the Cesar Millan way. It's like, and they've done it since like they learned from them maybe in the early thousands or something, and they're still doing the exact same thing even today. It's like how are you still doing it that way, and how have you not progressed? It's like, I mean, good on them if it's working, but I don't quite get that. It's
Yeah, but nonetheless, they're good tools to have in the toolbox. But without understanding the whys behind it, right? It's so complicated. Like I've been doing a couple lessons with this local breeder that has a bunch of, they breed little dogs, whatever. So they got a bunch of fucking little dogs, right? And they were working with another trainer for a while. They really wanted to provide these dogs they were breeding, like their actual breeding program dogs, with just good training, a good environment. Like they're really doing good work on these dogs, right? And they were working with this local trainer who's like a hardcore, just like Keeler method, just straight up trainer, right? And it's fine. Like they get good results and stuff like that, but they have so many dogs. They got like 23 dogs, right? So they're trying to go through this program with every single one of these dogs, take it start to finish from being fully on leash trained and fully off leash trained and this and that. And it ain't going to happen, right? Like you're not going to be able to do it. And if you do it, you're not going to be able to stay consistent with all of them with it. It's just going to be a mess. And really, all they actually wanted was for the dogs to be more well-mannered so they could keep the majority of the dogs actually in their home with them so that they didn't have to be like in the back in the kennel all the time, right? So they could have a little bit better of a life, obviously, right? So that was a situation where it's like, all right, well, like, we'll implement some training for some of the dogs if there's things like leash walking you want to work on, or there's a couple she wanted to have a good recall on and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of it was just general basic manners. And these dogs are this fucking big. Like we didn't need to be slapping e-collars on all of them and prong collars on all of them and this and that. Like like it was actually probably one of the first times in a very long time that I literally felt like I was like Caesar Milan in their fucking house. I'm teaching them obviously, hey, this is what markers are. This is how we use them. This is how we attach consequences to behavior. This is how we reward for things we want and stuff. But it was very much like no tools. Let's just understand how our energy is influencing this pack of like 23 dogs that you have and how to just baseline, make sure we're not creating any problems, right? But because I understood the concepts of how Caesar talks about energy and talks about the owners and this and that, but I also knew the more sciencey side of like, this is how we actually implement these things, and I could articulate how to implement these things to the owners. They were able to be successful with it. And we did like 2 or 3 sessions. And the last one I went back to, they're like, honestly, like, it's just like we don't really have a big headache right now, And these dogs aren't fucking fully off leash trained or anything, but like they behave themselves well enough where they can enjoy them. So, yeah.
That's like what you're saying about like, again, like having these methods as tools. Cause it's like, let's say you only ever learn from Michael Ellis as your training, guide. You're never going to learn how to socialize dogs. You're never going to learn how to put multiple dogs together and train them. That's just never going to be, that's going to be something you say is just like, well, your dog doesn't need dog friends or something. You'll be one of those people, right? Because those methods don't have anything to do with that. Those concepts don't apply, to socializing a pack of dogs, especially a pack of dogs that maybe a couple of them might kill each other, right? Yeah. And then again, if you don't learn from people like Caesar, or if you're not learning or, looking at stuff like Brandon Foucher's stuff, who you got me into, because that's, interesting stuff as well. But if you're not looking into that stuff, then you're not going to know those concepts. You're always going to be stuck with that mentality of like, well, your dog just doesn't need to socialize with other dogs, or I don't know how to make that interaction happen without just putting the dogs on place beds across from each other, And so having those different methods and tools is so important for those kinds of situations,
Yeah, I think, I try to, like, as we're, when we're doing these podcasts, I try to, like, my brain is always crafting, like, what is, like, the underlying, like, a message we're trying to get across with, like, any individual episode we're doing. And, like, one of the things right now, like, everything we're talking about, I feel like is related to clients, but, like, not super, right? And it's also related to trainers, but, like, also not 100%, like, listen to this and you're going to learn all these types of things. But, like, I really think a lot of the understanding of what I really would like to see out of the dog world, that I feel like we're moving this direction, that it's like moving further away from this, is instead of just like inherently looking at things as right and wrong, you just try to look at, even if you disagree with like so many people, like Jeff Gelman, we mentioned his name twice, I think, like, and Sean, right? Like those are 2 names that right now catch a lot of heat in the dog world if you talk about them, right? Like you got Jeff Gelman, who everybody claims is the animal abuser of all animal abusers, and then Sean, who is the one that's driving around his fucking Porsches and just in it to make money and stuff like that. And even if you disagree completely with their methods, just try to retain or pull something from that you could at least appreciate and understand why they're doing the things they're doing, where even if it's incorrect, maybe there's something you could take from it that's going to help you out a little bit. And the more you understand everybody's individual concepts, you don't even have to implement them, but I feel like you won't find yourself in that trap where you're constantly jumping around from person to person and just going too all in this, too all in that, and like sacrificing that everybody's got their why behind stuff,
Yeah, it's that's definitely it. It's again, whether you're a trainer or an owner,
Sure.
you can get in trouble if you're just, focused on that one, you're just stuck with one method or one ideology kind of thing.
Hmm.
Because yeah, you run into those dogs, or you get that dog that, whatever you're doing is not working, or it stopped working, and now you're stuck, right? But then, like you said, then you jump to the next method and go all in on that and forget everything you learned in the last one, right? That last, training program you did, or whatever the case is. But so it's yeah, I don't know. It's tough for like the online training in general. The world is tough because there's just so much information. It's easy to get too much information, get that analysis paralysis, and you don't know what to do, with the information. So,
Yeah.
but the best thing you can do is just start, experiment, do what works, find something that you find, works for you and is enjoyable for you.
Yeah.
And stick with that. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. The experiment, having a place where you could comfortably experiment and not have
Yes.
all this pressure of getting results for somebody, or I have this deadline or anything like that. I feel like it's so important, right? I was talking to a colleague that I speak with somewhat regularly, who was asking some questions recently and kind of like going through this phase, I would say, of like self-doubt almost, and like this individual knows what they're doing. They're very intelligent. They understand training concepts. They spend so much time researching things and educating themselves and stuff like that. But it feels like, and this person is probably going to listen to this, so sorry I'm talking about you, whatever. But it feels like a lot of the pressure is coming from this individual does primarily one-on-one sessions, right? So everything they're doing, every time they learn a concept from somewhere, right, and they want to try that concept out, they're needing to do it with an audience in front of them that's like, I'm watching you and this better work kind of thing. You know what I mean? Because I'm paying you for this time, right? And God, the amount of times when I was learning concepts that I would play around with something for a day, 2 days, 3 days, an hour, whatever, and just have it be very, very fucking apparent. This is not correct, right? Like whatever, something I'm doing right now is not working, right? Something's not clicking, whatever. But I didn't have that pressure on me. I didn't feel that glooming like self-doubt fall on myself because it was just a natural part of my learning progression, right? And I was able to then tweak it and fine tune it and stuff and get it to a place where it's like, okay, it did work because I started to understand it a little bit more. And I think people need to have the ability to do that, whether it's personal dogs obviously are really great for that, but like obviously as you move through your training process, your dogs become well trained enough where there's not as much to experiment with them, board and trains are so phenomenal for that, right? Even past that, I always tell everybody, like, if you have the ability to do so, if you can't do board and trains, right? If you could just go foster a dog for like 3 months and just have a dog in your house that you just pro bono, I'll keep this dog for 3 months just to, help provide a little training there, a little training there. Don't pay me for it. It's no big deal, right? Just have some way that you could just play around with stuff and just have your lab to experiment with. Man, that I think people would be much more confident in the things that they actually go to do if they were able to spend that time on that kind of stuff a little bit more,
Yeah, and that's where I couldn't imagine starting my training journey like I said, like with Joint Forces, for instance, they hire all their trainers from training schools.
Yeah.
So like Tom Rose, Kennelwood Academy and stuff like that. And again, it's like they can't experiment in those places, they're learning one way and one way only. And you can see you can see how much they struggle. Like I can watch these trainers when I'm there sometimes just struggling with very simple, basic things because they know how to use the prong collar, they know how to use a marker, and that's it. And that's all that they know. And that's all that they can do because they can't experiment with these dogs necessarily, right? They have a specific training protocol or practice way that they need to do things. And, even for my business, we have 2 other trainers, including myself. There's 2 other trainers. But again, I don't give them a specific way that they have to train. There's obviously certain things that are, I guess, the way that we do things in terms of our ethics and whatnot. But I'm not saying you have to train dog X this way. They need to go home knowing this marker in this way. I let my trainers experiment and they kind of learn what works and what doesn't. And I can kind of guide them if I think that they need guidance, or I can ask them for guidance if I need that guidance. And that again, that ability to bounce ideas, concepts, and even compare dogs is so awesome to have that, right? Like to be able to like say like, hey, like, this dog looks like this dog looks like this, doing these behaviors. How'd you get your dog to do it like that kind of thing, right? And we can bounce these ideas off of each other. But being trapped, like not being able to experiment, would be so difficult.
Yeah.
And like you said, doing just private trainings. When I started my business, I probably only did like 3 paid private training sessions before I took in my first board and train.
Yeah.
And that's once I took in my first board and train, I never stopped. And that was all I was using or doing was board and trains primarily. And I was able to experiment. I'd get a dog for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and I'd be able to try all these different concepts. So this, see what works, see what doesn't work, see what sticks and stuff. And I think that's so important if you're a new trainer starting out, getting into board and trains and making sure that making sure you're working in a place or an environment that allows you to experiment a bit, while still making sure you're staying on a good path. Because again, you don't want to be experimenting with too much crazy stuff, But still, like you do need to try it out. But it's again, I think that's just so important. So the board and train thing, making sure that you can get into a place or starting your business with a board and train program in place is so important. I think if you're a new trainer.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so that's another interesting question. So now you're obviously more established now, right? You've been doing this 6-7 years, right? Do you prefer boarding trains still, or do you prefer one-on-ones now?
I enjoy both to the same degree, I would say. Like there's some private sessions that I really, really enjoy and are very, very rewarding. There's some that are just a pain in my ass and I dread going to them and stuff, right? Same with board and trains. I think that some board and trains I really enjoy the process. Other ones it's just like, oh, let's just get this 3 weeks over with kind of thing, right? So I like both. I like both equally as much. I would say for the most part, I like both equally as much, to be honest. Yeah. I think private training, in my opinion, because I have to be, it requires so much more skill, I think, to effectively train a dog in a private training session, especially if you're doing like behavior modification or whatever, right? And maybe not like simple, like off leash, like recall or something that's easy. But if you're trying to do like a behavior modification program through private sessions and you're successful, I think that really speaks to you as a trainer. And like, even myself now, like I do a lot of my private training sessions now where I don't even handle the dog. I don't take the leash, kind of like Larry Crone style, and I used to give shit, talk shit about Larry Crone kind of for saying stuff like that. Like, oh, you should be able to train these dogs without having to take the leash and stuff. And I would say like, no, that's just ridiculous. Get the leash and get it under control. But now I see how you can effectively do that. Right. And it's just fun to play around with that stuff. And with private training, there's just more on the line, I guess, right? Because like you said, the audience is there watching. At first, if I was a new trainer and wasn't confident in what I was doing, that would concern me. But now that I'm confident in what I'm doing, that's awesome. I'm like, let's try, watch the progress, watch this unfold kind of thing, right? And it's fun now. It's not stressful for me. I don't go in there wondering like, oh no, this isn't working, but we're going to do it again anyway kind of thing. Right. It's, so for me now, and because I'm the owner of the business, the private training is more fun and more rewarding in that regards because, again, it just requires more skill, more effort.
Yeah. I think getting to like the thing that like has had me fairly excited in the last, 6 months, 7 months, something like that, has been really diving into the behavioral modification one-on-one side of things. It's something we've always done. Like we've never had firm rules of, if your dog is aggressive or this or that, it has to do a board and train. But I would say in the past, like years ago, like not necessarily recently, but like we would definitely sway people more towards like, oh, you got a really serious dog, like it should do a board and train, right? And I've almost ping-ponged like the opposite direction lately from the standpoint of, serious behavioral modification in one-on-one classes is so fucking beneficial to owners and for trainers. One, like you were saying, from a skill set standpoint, like you've got to, as a trainer, be able to understand how can I break this stuff down so simply for the owner to be successful and safe with stuff if you have like a really aggressive dog, for example, or something like that. And two, I'm getting the week by week progress updates, right? Like, I mean, it's just every time, like, talk about experimenting, right? Like, every time I give you something to try for this first week, I'm getting an immediate case study back of how did that thing impact your day to day, right? And I feel like that's really, as trainers move more towards doing more one-on-ones and out of board and trains and stuff like that, man, that's really where a lot of skill can be refined and defined is when you do one-on-one classes for those types of things. And you have to figure out a way to articulate your concepts clearly enough where people get it and can successfully implement it to be successful, right? I think that's so huge. And I just see so many trainers, at least in Cleveland, right? And I feel like I see it online also, that literally say, if your dog has serious anxiety or serious aggression or this or that, they have to do a board and train. And I just don't understand that. Like, board and trains don't fix dogs. They don't, like, it teaches the dog some skills and can help them be successful for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But there's so much work when you have a behavioral modification case that you have to do post board and train with the owner to get them to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You have to pair it with the private sessions, regardless if you want them to do the board. And that realistically, I suppose that is probably the single best way to do it, is like a board and train followed by a bunch of private sessions. If an owner is going to do a behavior mod program, probably the best way to do it, right? But like you said, it's like I shared a quote recently from Larry on my Facebook page, from Larry Cronin. I think it was don't try to impress the owner with what you can do with their dog. Try to impress the dog with what you can do with their owner. Yeah. And I really love that quote, because that's just it, right? It's like, cool. It doesn't matter what you can do with the dog. It matters what the owner can do. And, even in a board and train setting, you can try to convince yourself that, hey, like, here on the property or here in this place that we've been training for the last 3 weeks, the dog's doing great with me around. And you can try to fool yourself into, thinking that that's long-term progress. But I guarantee you, a month down the road, that owner's calling you with problems, right? If that's all you did was one follow-up session, or even a couple little follow-up sessions with a serious behavior mod program, I guarantee that's not going to last. The progress you made with that dog, unless that owner you can visibly see that same progress for an extended period with that owner, it's not going to work either. And again, that's the nice thing about private training. You're seeing the progress over a 6-week period with the owner, not a 6-week period in your controlled fish tank of a training environment or whatever, right? And that's really where you see the behaviors and stuff happen. And like I said, it goes back to that idea of the training and drive thing. It's like the dog is going to act a different way at home with the owners, and you need to make sure that your training incorporates that somehow, right? Whether that means you're doing in-home visits after a board and train, which I think is incredibly important, or you're doing, private sessions at your location and maybe at their location if you can, right? Those things are all very, very vital, I think,
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say that the other big piece of advice for trainers and stuff that might be listening to this is, like, as you're doing those things too, and I think the training and the concept you're talking about with, like, training and drive and being able to replicate that state of mind the dog is going to be in the house, right, or wherever the problematic behavior exists, like, throughout your training program, is don't get too much into a trap, because everybody falls in this trap, myself included, right? Don't fall too much into the trap of having a curriculum in your head the dog has to follow, right? Like, there are so many. I used an example recently of we have this German Shepherd that did a board and train with us recently that I sent home that lives on a fucking farm. They live on 35 acres with, like, cows and sheep, and fucking the dog is literally just loose outside all fucking day long, and, like, doing farm work with the fucking owners and stuff like that. And so many people would spend all this time, like, on, like, place or bed or, like, leash walking or this or that. This dog is never going to be leash walked, right? Like, this dog is going to be off leash on a farm and needs to be able to coexist with the animals and coexist with the other dogs on the property and just be fucking well-mannered. So we really had to cater the training program to, like, all these things I feel like the dog should know, right? They don't need to know it. Right? They need to know these things for their situation, right? Yeah. And, again, like, there's you could look at, like, there are things that maybe the owner doesn't want that I could see that they need, right? But there are definitely plenty of situations where I look at things and think the dog needs certain things, but really they need something else. So trying to look at the individual situation of the dog and really make it, people say, like, train the dog in front of you, like train the situation in front of you, right? Train the owner in front of you, right? There's a lot more to it than just that.
There's with one of Ivan's courses that he has, the Make Your Dog Somebody course. He tells a very interesting anecdotal story from his life, how he used to work in the as a guide dog trainer in, I believe, LA or California. He used to be a guide dog trainer, and he tells a story about how he was a high level trainer at the time. He could train really, really good, nice obedience and stuff, and he would work in the guide dog program alongside other trainers, and he would watch these trainers, these other trainers that have been in the guide dog program training for a long time. He'd watch them train and he would see it was sloppy. They looked not good. They were slow moving. They were, doing all these things kind of strangely and not putting much effort into it, et cetera, right? And he was confused by this. And then they would do these evaluations on the dogs where they would give them a score on how the dog does to the program. And his dogs would get like I think it was like a point system of like 3 out of 5 points or something. Meanwhile, these people who he thought the dogs looked kind of sloppy were getting like 5 points in their training or whatever, right? They were getting, better results from their training. And the reason why is because these more experienced trainers were training the way the owner was going to work with the dog. They weren't training the way they were going to work with the dog. Yeah. Ivan would be doing the flashy obedience and stuff. He'd be doing like the whips into heel and all this stuff. Meanwhile, the dog would be going to an obese diabetic that can't see anything, right? Yeah. And so the people that know, the experienced trainers, they're training with that in mind. They're training with the knowledge of who is the owner that this dog is going to, what are the circumstances that they're going into, and replicating that, right? And so that's the same thing now that I do in board and trains as well, or do it during private training, is make sure that what you're doing, the owner can easily replicate. And like you said, it fits in with what the owner actually wants and what they can do. If you're, again, taking on a board and train and it's an elderly couple and you're teaching the dog, how to play really aggressive tug or, doing really quick, Michael Ellis style obedience with the dog, and it's all hunky dory and fun and fine with you. Meanwhile, these people are, 70 years old and can barely, move or get excited. Yeah. Good luck, right? What you did during that board and train is not going to stick, right? Yeah. So you need to make sure that you're, taking notes on who the client is, understanding their behavior, speaking with them, really getting to know them. Tyler is somebody that really ingrained this into me, is really making sure you're getting a lot of detail through your consultations, through your phone calls with these people, through your interactions with them, picking up on their little mannerisms. As I watch people handle their dogs in private sessions, I'm just making little mental notes all the time of the way that they do things. And you'll see some trainers that are like, no, you didn't yes your dog at the right moment, or stop repeating the command. And they're just, little things that really in the big picture are not going to make a huge difference with how the dog and the owner train. And in fact, that's most likely how the owner is going to be. You're never going to change that owner's mannerisms in your 6 weeks. So work with those mannerisms, right? If the owner repeats the command, then that's fine. Just work that into, the training. Don't just spend a session like, hey, you can't repeat the command, or you have to deliver the marker this way, like this, right?
Yeah.
Just work with what they're giving you. And it's so much easier on the dog and the owner when you do that. So again, I think that's such an important concept, is making sure you're working with the owner in front of you as well as the dog in front of you,
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think that's so great. And there's such like not talked about concepts, you know what I mean? Like everybody focuses on precision and this and that and things being so perfect and all that kind of stuff, where it's like real life with your dogs is just like sloppy sometimes, like even with my dogs.
It is, right? 100%.
Like it's just loose and it's sloppy and it's just, we're just hanging out and just enjoying each other, which is obviously another big overarching part of this conversation that you talked about quite a bit at the beginning, obviously.
Exactly.
But that's really it. And the obedience just facilitates being able to help the dog through some challenging situations so you could enjoy them more, right? So let's put some emphasis on the enjoyment side of things. Let's put some emphasis on the obedience, but really show you where you need it, where you don't need it. Because there's a lot of situations that people will overcomplicate things with fucking commands, right? Where they just don't need to be doing that. And their life would be so much, right? Like I I really try my hardest to I tell people, like, I coach my clients to live with their dogs like I live with my dogs, right? And I'm a fucking dog trainer, but like I do not do all sorts of crazy shit with my dog. I really don't. Like I live such a natural, like holistic, whatever the fuck you want to call it, life with them, where we just like hang out and go for some walks here and there and hang out in the backyard, you know. And the only times I really dial them in is if we're going out to like a busy public place. Like that's really the only time that I ever ask anything very demanding of them, you know. And
yes, exactly.
I
and
think
that's
there's so much of that.
but that's the way that. And that's the way most owners are going to be at the end of the day. You're never going to train. The average owner is not going to become a dog trainer in 6 weeks of a training program or over the course of a 3-week board and train special. They're not going to become a dog trainer.
Yeah.
And so you really have to keep that in mind, right? And I think it's just one of those things where it's like, you know, I just think it's one of those things where people need to understand that concept more, you know, really simplify things for owners and stuff. The more you can simplify things and, again, break them down to their fundamentals, the more successful and long-term successful you'll be, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing there, you know?
Yeah, I love that. Hell yeah, man. I mean, you got anything else you want to, do you got anything? Anybody want to add anything else to the people that may be listening?
I mean, as far as that conversation goes, I think that's a pretty good conversation right now. Hey, I mean, yeah, like I said, it's just whether you're a new trainer or a new owner, I think the biggest thing is just make sure you're learning the fundamentals and you're mastering that before you start getting carried away with too much, right?
Yeah.
And also be objective. Don't. That's the other big thing is to be objective. You know, you really make sure you understand, like, okay, I'm doing this and it's clearly not working. What do I need to do different? Don't keep trying to do the same thing and pretending it's working. Or, you know, that's when you start getting those trainers and stuff that start saying, well, like I taught the owner to do this and they're not doing it now. It's like, is that really what's happening? Is the owner really not doing it, or did what you teach them not work? And now they're seeing that, because owners they're gonna let you know if it's not working, right? I mean, they might not let you know, but you know, you'll know if it's not working, right? They'll either be calling you, telling you it's not working, or they won't be calling you and you'll see them on another dog trainer's feed somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just one of those things to really be objective with that kind of thing, and pay attention to that. That's I guess a big part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just true honesty with the work you're doing. Right. Yeah. Don't get too caught up in all the other things, but like art is what you're doing actually helping people. I think that's a huge last point.
For sure. No, and I think, I think we should definitely chat again. Maybe the next time we can have a conversation. We could do an evening or something, have a couple drinks or something.
Oh yeah.
I think that would be a lot of fun too. So
yeah, dude, 100%.
You can get your bourbon.
No, I appreciate you having me on.
No,
I get some bourbon in us, eh?
I'm glad we were able to make this happen for sure. Obviously, Chinook Canine. How do you pronounce it? Is it Chinook? Is it Chinook?
Chinook Canine. It's Chinook.
Right.
So it's Chinook, like SH.
All right.
That's the meaning is, I live in the Rocky Mountains. Here's where we live here in Calgary. So we're right to the west or to the east of the Rocky Mountains, and we get a wind that comes out from the mountains that warms things up in the winter time. So it'll be like, you know, minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter, like just as cold as it can be. A Chinook wind will blow in and it'll warm up to, you know, 35 degrees Fahrenheit kind of thing.
Jesus.
It'll warm up like right away. And so that's the meaning of it. So it's a regional term. A lot of people know it from the helicopter and stuff too, but that's kind of why I named the business that. And it's been a catchy name. A lot of people really enjoy the name. I think I snagged a good one with that. So
Oh yeah, man. Well, listen, we'll put all your links in the notes, obviously. Really appreciate the conversation. We'll definitely do it again. And
for sure.
Great talking to you, man.
Yeah, it's nice.
No, I appreciate you guys having me on the show. It was great talking to you guys. And again, I love your podcast. So being on it's just awesome. So
we appreciate that.
Looking forward to listening to the episode too. I hate hearing myself talk, but looking forward to listening to it. So
you guys were nerding out. So I was like an hour and a half. I was just like learning right there. I was like,
okay, like I said, I think if we get some bourbon in us, we can really nerd out for a little bit longer too. So we'll have to do that next time.
Hell yeah, man. All right. Well, I really appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your day, man.